Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money with your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Pantheon.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 411 of Screw the Commute podcast. I'm here with Josh Tapp, and I was on his show, The Lucky Titan, and you got to go over and subscribe to that because, boy, he has some great people on, and I guess he was slumming it to have me on that one day. But other than that, there's a lot of great people on there. We'll bring him on in a minute. I hope you didn't miss episode 410. John Lee Dumas was here. He's on a big tour to promote his new book, The Common Path to Uncommon Success. I've been on his show twice. It's one of the best-known entrepreneurial podcasts in the world. He really laid it on you really quick on that episode 410. And of course, anytime you want to get to another episode, you go to screwthecommute.com and then the episode number /410. Now, how'd you like to hear your own voice here on Screw the Commute? Well, if the show's helped you out at all in your business or given you ideas to help you start a business, we want to hear about it. Go to screwthecommute.com and look for a little blue sidebar that says send a voicemail. Click on it, talk into your phone or computer, and tell me how the show's helped you out. And don't forget to put your website on there, and you'll get a big shout out in your own voice on a future episode of Screw the Commute. Now, pick up a copy of our automation ebook. Folks, I'm just going to say you're welcome right now, right? Because if you get this book, you're going to thank me. Just one of the tips in the book has saved me, we actually figured it out, 7.5 million keystrokes. It's allowed me to handle up to 150,000 subscribers and 40,000 customers without pulling my hair out. So grab a copy of that at screwthecommute.com/automate free. Screwthecommute.com/automate free. And while you're over there, pick up a copy of our podcast app. That's screwthecommute.com/app. That's APP. You can put us on your cell phone and tablet. We got all kinds of video and screen capture training so you can use all the cool features and take us with you on the road. All right. Now, I know people are still freaking out with this pandemic. You know, you had to quit your job, or if you even had a job and the kids are in school one day and they're not in the next day, and they tell you your kids are going to burst into flames. I don't know what they're trying to shove down your throat, but people are suffering because of this. I know that, and I'm sensitive to that. However, I'm not, and my students aren't, because we know how to sell online. I've been preaching this to you folks for 23 years. I've been selling on the commercial internet for 27 years since it started. And I call it an insurance policy for when crazy stuff like this happens, you don't have to flip out and you can keep your bills paid and still thrive in the face of nastiness out there in the world. So I formalized this training in the form of a school, the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia. It's the only licensed, dedicated internet marketing school in the country, probably the world. It's licensed to operate by SHEV, the State Council on Higher Education in Virginia. But you don't have to be in Virginia because it's distance learning, and it's good distance learning, not like these four-year colleges that all of a sudden have a distance learning program with people who don't even know what they're doing. So ours has been that way for 13 years and gets super high ratings with the state and the all of our graduates. So check it out at imtcva.org. And a little later, I'll tell you how you can get a full scholarship to the school if you're in my mentor program. All right, let's get to the main event. Josh is the host of the Apple iTunes Top 50 Marketing and Entrepreneurship podcast. He's worked with some of the world's top entrepreneurs, discovering their top business success secrets, and he shares them with his audience of raving fans. And he's also helped over 500 entrepreneurs to monetize their personal brands through his proprietary. I got to tell you, when I first read this quickly, I thought it said the Parthenon Method, like you have to go to ancient Greece and wear a robe or something. I don't know.
Very, very close.
Yeah, but it's the Pantheon Method that he's going to tell us all about. He lives in the beautiful lakes of Idaho. I don't think he is actually in the lake, but he's on the lake of Idaho with his loving wife, Mackenzie, and a beta fish blue. I don't know what that is either, but Josh, are you ready to screw the commute?
Let's do it, man. It's exciting.
Hey, how's it going, man?
You're so excited to be here. It's going to be
What's
a fun.
what's a beta fish blue? What is that?
It's Data Fish, comma Blue. You
Oh,
should have fixed that. Her name is Blue, and you know what's kind of sad? Right after I sent you that, she died.
oh.
Partner's died. I have to adjust my bio.
Did she get the typical toilet funeral or what?
Well, I tell you what, my wife wanted to give her the honorary Vikings funeral with a flaming arrow, but I was like, it's a fish
Yeah.
going in the toilet.
Hard to hit too with those arrows,
I don't know. We're pretty good, Tom.
Oh, are you good? Good with the bow and arrow? That's good. So tell us about the Pantheon Method. Tell us what you're doing now, and then we'll take you back and see how you came up through your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that question. I mean, the Pantheon Method is really a methodology that I built after interviewing 500 different entrepreneurs and working with them in various capacities and finding out that there was a common path between all of these entrepreneurs who were very, very successful. And I asked all of them, what would you do if you had to start again from scratch and build a really successful company within 90 days? And all of them were telling me these different strategies that they were talking about, but they all had one common path, which again has become the Pantheon Method. And it's all about building a personal brand around a high ticket product or service and monetizing it using a podcast. Every single one of them. It was very, very intriguing to see that. So we've built our entire method around it. We've tried it in our own company, tested it with multiple other companies as well. And we've been bringing it out to the world.
Well, yeah. And, I poo-pooed podcasts for a long time because in the early days, people just were hearing themselves talk and it's kind of an ego trip. But nowadays, people are making money. And one of the reasons I jumped on it, Josh, is because new cars can play podcasts right from the dashboard, and the listenership has exceeded XM radio, and the home devices like the Amazon Echo and the Google Assistant thing. So there's hundreds and hundreds of millions more people that can access podcasts. So that's why I jumped on, and it's what you're talking about. I have high ticket products. I don't go for any sponsors. It's been wonderful. Like I said, you're episode 411. So must be worth it, or I wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. And I love that because really, Tom, this is what's beautiful about it. And I was just having a conversation with some other top podcasters. And if you look at the users or the listenership for podcasts, they pretty much fall into three big areas. It's some of the English-speaking European countries. You have the US and Canada, obviously, it's like North American countries. And then you have Australia. And those are pretty much the only places that podcasting has really become hugely popular.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still places like India that are going to open up. We all know how many people are over there, but the listenership is going to blow up in places like that. I mean, if you think we've even scratched the surface of podcasting, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now I'm a big fan of doing a quality podcast. A lot of people are slopping things together with poor microphones and poor sound quality. Do you help people with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems that people have when they hop into this space is they think that they have to do it all by themselves. But it's very, very easy to launch a podcast with quality sound equipment that you probably already own and that you can scale, without much effort, right? The number one problem that they have when they come in is they think that they've got to have these like Shure SM7B mics, it's like $1,000 setup. And a lot of people, that immediately turns them off to it. But we've seen some of the top 50 podcasts are done using Apple AirPods and their iPhone, literally. I mean, it's absurd. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it is absurd because you do have to know what you're doing to get the decent quality out of those things. Because the one thing about it is people will put up with poor video, but they won't put up too much with poor audio. They have to at least be able to hear it because that's the only chance they have to consume the content.
Absolutely. And, what's kind of funny is that when most people try to approach this, they think they have to drop tens of thousands of dollars, but good audio quality has more to do with where you are than what you have. It's about being in a quiet room. That's number one. I mean, if you can just be in a quiet room, you're going to be off to the races. But the way that we believe and the way that we help people is, the podcast should be the engine for everything that you do. I mean, it produces the content, it produces the relationships, it gives you opportunities to sell your own stuff. It allows you to bring people into your world and cultivate your existing audience. I mean, for most people, I don't feel like I even have to sell them on starting a podcast. But most people are scared about is saying, how do I make it make money? And like you're saying, Tom, then the first thing they do is say, oh, I'm going to try and get sponsorship.
Oh.
And believe you me, that is the last way you want to monetize.
Yeah, I saw some figures that the average pays between $12 and $18 per 1,000 downloads per episode. Well, it's hard to get 1,000 downloads. It could take you a year to get 1,000 downloads per episode. And you could be making money from day one if you did what you and I do.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, Tom, this is what's hilarious. And a lot of people don't believe me until they try it. But before you even seek sponsorship, if you just seek to make connections and sell through the connections that you make on your podcast, you'll be closing deals before you get your first listener.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we closed our first 6-figure contract before we had 5 listeners on our podcast. I'm dead serious. And nobody believes me with that. I have to show them the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty out there for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just my personal belief system. I really do believe that podcasting, A, is the easiest way to get in the door with people, but B, it's a very simple vehicle to produce a lot of great content, especially for the introvert like me. I mean, if you're feeling like, hey, I don't have that charisma to be able to go out and have a great interview, like Tom here, for example, right? Very energetic person. You might be saying, oh, I could never be Tom. But here's the thing. How about instead of trying to be Tom, bring Tom onto your show, leverage him, and all of a sudden you're tied to Tom being a really cool content creator. It's a really brilliant thing if you want to level up and get in higher circles.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And the one thing that's kind of right in front of everybody's face that not everybody pulls out of this is that audio is the only medium that you can learn or be entertained while you're doing something else.
Right.
That's why it's so popular. That's why this is Screw the Commute. I mean, people are stuck in cars, twice a day listening, and they just hate it. And so you've got a captive audience in many ways when they're doing stuff. They can exercise, they can do all kinds of things while they're doing it. So how did you pick the name Pantheon?
So it was actually all based off of kind of interruption-based marketing. When I started the Lucky Titan podcast, I built it because I wanted to interview industry titans. And it was really funny because people kept telling me, Josh, that was such a cool name and all this. And I was honestly surprised because I felt like it was kind of dumb. I was embarrassed about it at first. But it was really intriguing because people loved and they related well to that. It's one of the big goals we all have is to be known as an industry expert or quote unquote titan. And the Pantheon is just a gathering of titans. And part of the Pantheon method is helping you to build your own Pantheon. It's bringing together the best people in your industry. You're going to make money with it, but you're going to be gathering people together, the titans in your industry, and immediately leveling yourself up. And, to illustrate this point, I mean, it was my story. I used to really struggle getting clients as a Facebook ads agency, decided to close the doors after, long story short, close the doors and start something new with zero network really outside of my local area. And within 2 months, I was sitting down with billionaires and in these circles with incredible people. And like I said, selling high ticket services to these people. And it changed the way that we did business entirely because I no longer had to feel like, well, one day I'll be able to hang out with Tom, right? For all of you who know this, I mean, I've talked about this on my own show, but with Tom, I heard your podcast. What was it, on John Lee Dumas's podcast like 4 or 5 years ago. And this was in the heat of my business failing, right?
Oh, great.
Here we are having a conversation,
right.
And yeah, anyway, so that's really just kind of what it comes down to.
Now, is Pantheon a real word or just make it up?
It is a real word. It means a gathering of titans, if you look it up.
Okay, because I looked up Parthenon, and it's evolved from strength and power and elevation of culture. So they're closely related because that's what you're doing. Yeah. So let's take you back. Were you an entrepreneurial kid?
Oh man. Yep. Tom, I'm actually 5th generation entrepreneur.
Wow.
And there are people in my family. So I'm one of 8 kids. We grew up in a farming community, right? So you have a lot of kids to run the farm, but my parents were never farmers. But my dad was very heavily invested in starting companies, and he never really succeeded at a really high level, for various reasons. But he taught us, entrepreneurship is the path.
Oh,
And
wow.
he sold me hook, line, and sinker growing up.
Where'd you
And
fall in the string of 8 kids?
the forgotten one.
The middle?
I'm number 5. Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Oh man. Anyways, I could rant about that for days, but it's funny being in a big family, right? Number 5, and you're another number, but they're glad to have you. They love you still. But my dad early on, I think, recognized that I was heavily interested in entrepreneurship. So he used to pay us to do manual labor if we would go work because he owned a construction company. So he'd pay us an hourly rate that was way better than we could have gotten getting a job. But even at 10 years old, he would actually pay me if I would read a business book and then give him a little 10-minute spiel about what I learned from it. He would actually pay me for it.
Wow, was he smart? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a brilliant. First off, it taught me to love to read. And by 10 years old, I was already understanding how business worked. And because of that, I had started lots of different businesses, from lawn mowing to selling junk on the side of the streets, because I was 10 years old and had nothing else I could do, right? But I made a lot of money as a kid doing these little side hustles. And that really stemmed into, once I became an adult and stepped into real entrepreneurship, I was ready. I was prepared, and I learned enough, right, to understand that, okay, this is how business works. But I can tell you right now, just because you have an understanding or the intellect about something does not mean you can apply it.
Right.
It was really easy to sell window washing or lawn mowing services, because it took me 2 hours of knocking on doors just saying, hey, do you want your windows washed? Sure. But man alive, if you don't want to do that the rest of your life, you have to learn how to be a marketer,
right?
And how to really speak the language of your customer. And for me, when I decided to start my first real business, which was a Facebook ads agency, it was a whole different ballgame, because I couldn't just go knock on doors anymore. I mean, I could walk into businesses and they'd be like, get out of here.
Right.
Couldn't get past the gatekeeper, right? So that kind of put me on my journey of figuring out, okay, how do I work with people I really want to work with? And I remember sitting back looking at these giants, the titans of industry, and just saying, wow, I want to work with those people one day. And it still never ceases to amaze me how quickly, not even just me, but the people we've worked with have been able to get in the door with such successful people so quickly by just providing them a platform to stand on, which is the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. I told you on your thing, I think, about getting invited to the White House just because I got a podcast and I interviewed the right person who put me in front of a bunch of people, and then they invited me to the White House. I mean, that's crazy. And look, John was on, John Lee Dumas was just on before recording your episode. And yeah, I've known him for a long time. I've been on his show a couple of times, but he knows thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs. And, if I email him, he'll get back to me in a reasonable amount of time, but not like over instantly. But when you knew he was on a podcast or, promoting something, these guys are publicity hounds, so they'll get on any kind of show. So, it can really open doors for you.
Well, and I think, and I love that you support that as well, Tom, because I think we've kind of entered a new age that you can skip hard networking and jump right to true connection and relating with people. And I remember when I first started my podcast, I'm like, you know what? If I fail, I'm just going to go get a job. That was what I told myself, because I had just finished my undergraduate degree in finance. I'm like, I could probably go get a pretty good job. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to try a podcast and see what happens. I've always wanted to do it. And
what was this roughly when?
This is roughly 3 years ago, I want to say.
All right.
About 3 years ago. And I remember sitting back and just saying, I'm just going to shoot for the stars. And I kind of laugh at myself now, because, that we've gone a lot further than that now.
Right. You're shooting for Mars now.
Yeah. I'm like, I want to sit down with a millionaire, somebody who makes $1 million. So I'm like, I'm going to reach out to the coolest $1 million earner that I know. I reached out to this guy. His name's Josh Tapp. Amazing guy. You can check out his stuff.
Same name as you too.
Same name as me, right? All Joshes are cool. But I reached out to him, not expecting an answer. I messaged him on LinkedIn and said, hey, I've been watching your content for years. I love what you do. Would you consider coming on my new podcast? He responded immediately. I mean, the second I sent that message, the dots showed up, because you have that moment of just, oh my gosh, what did I just do? I reached out to somebody. I don't even have a podcast. And he's like, that would be amazing. Yeah. He came on my show. Turns out he's making, $10 million a year. Very, very successful guy in the marketing space. And through him, I ended up meeting some amazing people, 100 millionaires, billionaires, I'm just putting financial numbers on them to kind of illustrate it, but very successful, high level people, high thinking people. And the podcast was how I was getting in the door.
Right.
And it just, for me, changed everything we did, because I said, okay, I don't have to try and sell Joe Schmo pizza restaurant owner in my local town and have to try and negotiate down to $300 a month because they're unwilling to pay more than that. I can reach out to somebody who has huge amounts of money, also has huge problems that need solved that I have the time to solve. And when I found those problems, I just started to fill them and provide a higher ticket service for it. And we've watched this time and time again. I mean, I just had he's a good friend of ours, a client of ours, who he was still working a job as a sales guy. And he was probably making $240,000 a year, but he'd been doing it for 20 years and was ready to start his own business. And I remember sitting down and talking with him, and he's like, Josh, I really want to do it. I want to do my own business. I'm like, well, then do it. Take the leap, man.
Yeah, really.
And he's like, yeah, but I mean, I do got to pay for my family still. I'm like, okay, just trust me on this one. He had about 3 to 6 months of money saved up. I'm like, just trust me. You'll be fine. He literally comes in, starts his own podcast. He got 8 guests, and he closed $220,000 in annual retainers to be a consultant. And to fulfill on those contracts was 5 hours a week, Tom. 5 hours a week.
Right.
He replaced his income basically in 2 weeks and he went from 60-hour weeks down to 5, doing the same thing basically. And it's opened the door for him to start multiple other things and become very successful himself. But that's the point I'm getting to, right? He was a sales guy, so he had that skill. But we've also had people, I worked with this lady who she had literally nothing to her name, was like, I'm just going to start. I'm going to try it. She did it, sold a $5,000 package to 5 people in her first 6 weeks. And I remember her just like, Josh, what on earth? This should not be this easy. It is. It's just relationships. It's making friends and finding a need they have and giving it to them.
Yeah. Now this, I want to focus a little bit on the transition when you started the podcast. So are you saying you had the opportunity to either go find a job or start a podcast? That was the time?
Yeah. So at the time, and I'll just kind of illustrate my story with this. I was one of the very lucky few who my wife I had just been married, and she was actually willing to work while I built my business. And
Wow.
I have to caveat this by saying, I know that that's a very rare situation.
Right.
But I do want to let everybody know here is if you have 3 to 6 months worth of savings saved up, you can start a business, period. It's just, even if you have to start it on the side, it's an amazing thing. Anyways, for me, my wife was providing a living for us. And I mean, it wasn't a huge living by any means, but she was covering our needs. And when all of this started happening, I decided, you know what? I'm going to try this podcast thing. I'm going to give it another 3 to 6 months, because my wife had already been providing for us for about a year. And it was my turn to take over. Like, I needed to start providing for our family. And she, anyway, she was a very, very good support in this. And she's like, you know what, it's fine. But I told her, give me 3 to 6 months. And so I decided to start the podcast, and as a last ditch effort for entrepreneurship temporarily. And if it didn't work, I was going to go get a job. That was really what it came down to, because I'm like, I have an education. I have a lot of good experience now. I could absolutely step out and get a job easily. And I won't lie to you, Tom, I was looking at jobs at the time I started my podcast.
That's smart. Yeah.
And it's that constant temptation, especially once you know you have some value to the market, to go and get that job, especially when financial times are tight. And I remember being really stressed out about that and feeling like, okay, I've got 3 to 6 months. Yeah, I put deadlines on myself, and decided to start the podcast because I closed the doors of my marketing agency. We had one client left, and I told them, hey, you know what? We decided to go a different direction, stop doing Facebook ads entirely. And we decided to adjust focus. And I'm like, instead of trying to build a product, I'm just going to find a group of people who have a problem and solve it for them. And that was the point of the podcast. My goal was just get in the door with high level people, figure out what they wanted, and then present them with a solution to that problem, whether it was mine or somebody else's. And that's kind of when the big transition happened for us, is we went from, selling a service to really figuring out what the true need of these people. And we found that wealthy people, very, very wealthy, successful people, obviously money is no longer an issue for them. But the number one problem they have is, in order to scale past where they're at or achieve another level of life, they have to start leveraging other people's time. And where I was currently at is I had full-time, I could have worked, 24-hour days
Right.
and all the time in the world, no money to my name other than what my wife was bringing in, right? But I was not producing any money myself. And so I said, you know what are the biggest time sucks for these guys? And I found that almost all of them, the two things they wanted is they wanted to meet amazing people, and they didn't want to have to take all the time to do it. So we started doing masterminds, charging our first one. We charged $10,000 for it to come to, because we knew enough people. I'm like, I'm just going to try. I'm going to try it at $10,000. And when the first guy said yes, I just about fell off my chair.
So did your wife.
Yeah, my wife. Yeah. She's like, pay off your debts now, dang it. Anyway, so I remember making that first sale and just being like, wow, freak, now I have to close 10 more people on this or we don't have a mastermind. But we ended up filling the seats of that mastermind, and the rest is history from there. But we've obviously, as we moved forward, found other needs that we could uniquely provide a solution to. The Pantheon Method is the result of that. It's looking at what are the needs that these people have and how can I provide that for them.
All right, so tell us about the tribe of Titans that I'm in and didn't even know I was in. So
I don't even know how you got in there.
I don't
Tom,
either.
I'm glad you're there.
I don't either. I had a link to click on. I said, click this link if you're going to be on my podcast. Okay, there I am. So tell us about that.
So the tribe of Titans actually sprung up as, and actually let me illustrate it with this. There's this story about this carpenter, and he was really struggling to grow out his carpentry business, and he was making tables for people or what have you. And as he was making those tables, he kept sweeping his sawdust and having to get rid of it and bring trash can loads of it to the dump or burn it or whatever he had to do. But then he took a step back one day and realized, what can I do with that sawdust to make money? And he ended up finding these places that would buy his sawdust. And so he built an entire business going around and collecting the sawdust from these other carpenters and selling it. And that became his business. And that's where the tribe of Titans came for me. I just started to build a list of people who I wanted to have on my show, and people who, other podcasters, so I could promote my show on their shows. And just, listening to people, they're like, man, I really wish there was a place where I could connect and get on shows easily. I'm like, oh, well, I have a good list. How about you just ask each other?
Yeah, right.
That's what the Tribe of Titans became. Is it's basically a matching platform. It's a social media community where you can get onto other people's shows or be featured, or you can find guests for your show. It's a very, very simple platform. It's kind of become my bread and butter place. I hang out there all the time. I'm constantly connecting people on there, and providing the best content I can possibly provide on there to really help people to grow a following of people, grow their personal brand.
Yeah, see, I was in it and didn't really know what the whole thing was. I just said, okay, I'll get in. And so I got a note from you today, I think. I don't know if it was automated or not. It says, hey, follow up with these 3 people. I'm like, about what? I don't even know why I'm here.
Actually not automated.
Do they have weight loss tips for me, or what is
These are potential collaborators.
Oh, okay.
And we have some amazing people in that group. I mean, some of the greatest people you'll ever work with are in that community. It truly is like a tribe of Titans, right? A group of people who are just amazing.
Well, the old joke, the Groucho Marx joke, is I don't know if I want to be in in a club that would have me as a member. so, 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 so when did this come about? How did you come up with this idea?
So this one was actually right around the time that we started our podcast, our first podcast. And again, it just kind of came because we saw the need and we filled the need. And I saw a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there, and I've actually helped some other people create even more advanced tools for this now as well, because it's such a need in our space to connect with great people and to find great guests. Honestly, if you're a podcaster, I mean, Tom gets this, you can get a lot of guests, but getting a guest that truly provides great value and then also helps you grow your show, I mean, it's kind of hard to find those type of people.
Mm-hmm.
So the Tribe of Titans, I initially built it as a community of givers. I'm only going to put people in who I know have reached out to me and said, Josh, here's a person for you. Here's somebody you should connect with, or here's a resource for you. I knew they were givers and they weren't trying to sell me anything. And so the group has been founded on people like that who are just genuinely trying to make some change. And for me, again, this was my sawdust. I needed it to get people for my own podcast. I needed it to get on other podcasts, but it just naturally grew from there because people saw the value. And it's kind of the launching point into our world. If you're looking to monetize your brand and use a podcast as the center of that, we're the place to go.
It costs $10,000 to join. Is that what it?
Yeah, I think it's 150 now. It's free.
Oh.
That's the beautiful thing. It is a free platform.
Wow. Because a lot of booking agencies are charging pretty penny to get in them.
Yeah.
You know?
Literally $200 a booking for a good agent. And we just said, you know what? Let's make it simple and available, because I mean, where I was at when I started my podcast, I couldn't pay somebody $200 to book me on a podcast.
Right.
Are you kidding me? I mean, we'd be broke, because I started off as a daily podcast. And so, I mean, there's no way to sustain that at $200.
Yeah, and they could get you on podcasts with like 3 listeners, you know?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And for me, like I said, it just kind of became this tool that I was like, this is a need. People need this. And I want to create a safe space for people to come and talk about their big concerns about podcasting or the big problems in their company without worrying that their clients are going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the big reasons we put this together is I know it's interesting. Right? When you have a real issue in your business, you know you could solve the problem by just posting in a group on Facebook. But if you posted it on Facebook, everybody's going to see it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
And so for a lot of people, it's really not a safe place to put their stuff because they worry their clients are going to see.
Exactly.
I am literally 2 months away from bankruptcy, right? So we've created this. It's a completely, we own the rights to the community. It's a separate community completely from any of the social media platforms for that reason. So it's just a safe place for people to be.
And this is tribe.theluckytitan.com. We'll have that in the show notes for everybody. Tribe.theluckytitan.com, right?
Yes, sir. That's where they can go.
There you go. So we got to take a brief sponsor break. When we come back, we're going to ask Josh what a typical day looks like for him and what his wife's doing nowadays. See how she's doing. So folks, about 23 years ago, I kind of turned the internet marketing guru world on its head, and that guys at my level and women too were charging 50 or 100 grand up front to teach you what they knew. And I knew a lot of these people. You give them 50 grand up front, they'd be hiding out in some lake in Idaho with hiding behind Josh's in the woods somewhere because they wouldn't take care of you. So I thought, it's not fair for small business people. So I charged a small entry fee, a relatively small entry fee, and then I tied myself to their success. So for me to get my 50,000, you have to net 200,000. Well, guess what? People really love this, and 1,700 plus students later, and 23 years, it's still going strong. And it's the longest running, most unique, most successful internet mentor program ever. And I have no trouble saying that because I've dared people for years to put theirs up line for line against mine, and nobody will do it because I'm kind of a fanatic. And you have things that you can't get anywhere else. You have an immersion weekend where you actually live in our big estate here. with me for an immersion weekend. You go in our TV studio and shoot marketing videos, which we edit and put the graphics on for you. And I saw at a seminar they were charging their seminar price $700 for just one of these. one couple came here and had got 53 of them out of us. So totally unique, and it's all one-on-one. You're not lumped in with people more advanced or beginners. And you also get a scholarship to my school that you can either use yourself or gift to somebody else. We had one guy join a mentor program, gifted it to his daughter, who he had spent $80,000 on her crappy education, and she's working a crappy job. And she's up to $6,000 a month as a side hustle and hasn't even graduated yet. So this is extremely powerful techniques that are in demand. You're not going to go to a four-year college, be out of the workforce, and lose hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then come out with the ability to protest and then compete for jobs at Starbucks. That's kind of the way it's going nowadays with regular schools. So check it out at greatinternetmarketingtraining.com, greatinternetmarketingtraining.com, and give me a call. I'm very accessible, and we'll talk about your future online. All right, let's get back to the main event. We're here with Josh Tapp. That's with two P's, by the way. He is the podcast host of The Lucky Titan, and he invented the Pantheon Method for success. And he's also got the Tribe of Titans, which you should definitely join, because he has a 90-day money-back guarantee for that. So it's free. So Josh, tell us what a typical day looks like for you and your lifestyle business. And also tell us how your wife's doing since this transition and you hit the big time.
Great question, Tom. Well, first off, I do want to let everybody know is take Tom up on that offer he just talked about. I mean, what an amazing offer. If you want to work with giants like Tom, I mean, this is a place to be. So, secondly, lifestyle for us. This is something I've really been focusing on in 2021, because the last year, my goal was to get to where I didn't have to work more than 20-hour weeks. And I'll tell you right now, I do work more than that many weeks, but I don't have to keep my business growing.
See, a lot of people come to me with 20-hour days.
Yeah, I know. Tom, I am the laziest entrepreneur you'll ever be. I do not I love entrepreneurship, but I am done by 3:00 if I start a day. And I used to beat myself up about that and shame myself. And I finally met a bunch of other entrepreneurs who live that 20-hour or less work week. And I'm like, thank you for giving me permission, because I just felt like I was lazy quitting at 3:00. But I mean, my typical day this year, I decided to really focus on starting to develop other areas of my life as well. And so we've been sticking with this. We're recording this in March, but at this point, I've stuck with it, right? It wasn't a New Year's resolution. I don't believe in those. I believed in, I want to make some changes. I was getting overweight and decided it was time to start working on that, and as well as my mental health and other business ventures as well. So really what my day has been looking like is I will wake up at 6:30. I go to the gym. I only spend about 30 to 45 minutes there. So you won't see me in any bodybuilding contests, but I do my 30 to 45 minutes. Then I come back. I do some scripture study as a religious man. And then I basically, by 9:00, I just kind of mosey my way over to work. And from there, I usually only work, like I said, I work from 9 typically till about 3 p.m. And the rest of the day is kind of history at that point. Currently, right now, what we're trying to do is I'm actually in the process of looking for other companies to purchase. We want to start growing our company through acquisitions. And so I've actually been spending 2 to 3 hours in the evening recently, focusing on that, trying to find companies and working in that sense. But my wife, she will not quit working. She works for a investment firm here in town. It's a family office, so they're a multi-billion-dollar company, and she loves being there. Can't get her to quit, so I'm still working on it. But she loves what she does, and so I'm happy that she's there and not just having to wait for me at home, right?
So what kind of you got any hobbies? What do you do the rest of the evening?
Oh, yes. So I do live in the lakes of Idaho, Tom.
Doesn't it get wet there? Jeez.
It does snow for at least 5 months out of the year. Not snow, but it's cold for 5 months out of the year.
Yeah.
But the other 7 months, and I hesitate to say this because we don't want a lot of people here in Idaho, but you will not get a more beautiful, secluded place than Idaho.
I have been there, and what worries me is everybody's fleeing the big cities, and they got their eye on your state.
Yep, and we love you, Californians, but we do not want you in our state anymore.
Right.
Stop coming.
Stay home.
We are getting so many people coming into our states, especially since coronavirus, weirdly enough. Huge booms in our cities, which has been fun to see, but also it's making me and my wife want to move further and further and further away from town. We love people, but the lakes are getting crowded, and that's when I get frustrated.
Oh, gee.
So we spend a lot of time on boats, kayaking, and doing a lot of things in the water. We fish. Anything you can think of in the water, we do it.
Wow. Great lifestyle business, huh?
Yeah, we love it. Some of you love the beach, and we do go to beaches, but we have a cabin up here about 2 hours away from our house, and that's where we spend the majority of our summer.
Good for you. Good for you. So tell them the best way to get a hold of you if anybody wants to get in touch with you, or is it the best way to go through the tribe and just get signed up there, huh?
Hey, I love that. It's a great question. Honestly, I'm a pretty accessible person. Like I said, I'm not here to be one of those people that I quote unquote protect my calendar, right? I love meeting entrepreneurs. And so the Tribe of Titans is the best place to get in contact with me. I pretty much have people managing all my other platforms. But if you come to the Tribe of Titans, you can message me personally, and you can know it will be me, and I will answer you, and I will connect you with people there. My goal, just so you know, especially for Tom, for your audience here, is if anybody comes from your audience, I just send me a message saying, hey, coming from Tom's podcast, I will personally connect you to 4 or 5 great people to kick off your podcasting journey or get you on other podcasts.
Beautiful. What a deal. So thanks so much for coming on, man. I was so afraid that it was the Parthenon and I had to wear a toga or something to be in.
We're going to have a toga party on the podcast.
Well, thanks so much. Give my best to your wife, and let's see. It's a 2:45 on the East Coast, so you still got a couple hours to work yet before you take off.
Back-to-back calls today, Tom. That's my Wednesday. So I am excited, though, and thank you so much for having me on, Tom. This was awesome.
My pleasure, folks. So check out tribe.theluckytitan.com. What a deal, folks, because like I said, a lot of agencies, I mean, I've heard as much as somebody spending $11,000 for like 30 bookings. So it can get very pricey. So, and then who knows what you'll get out of them. There's no guarantees that it'll be top shows. See, that's the thing. So this is a great opportunity for everybody. Tribe.theluckytitan.com, and we will catch you